Okay, so this video may be a little bit longer. I'm going to try and make it short. This is my mealworm farming system, and it's one that I developed myself by doing some research and looking online at what people were doing. You don't have to do this as complicated as I'm doing it. I just wanted to do this as a test, sort of, to see if I could maybe do this commercially, on a bigger scale. And so I wanted to create a unit that I could potentially scale to a different size operation later. And so I put a little more engineering into it than I probably should have, and I spent a little more money than I should have, but it works for me. And so I'm going to explain what it is, and then you can obviously make your own much, much simpler. There's lots of videos online about how to do it, on a table in your house if you want. I keep these outside because I want to make sure that when I'm working with the mealworms, that if something drops on the ground, I can sweep it up and I can put it in the trash can, and I don't have to worry about, stray beetles getting out of my house. Not that that's a problem, but just, for my purposes, this works better. So what I designed is essentially an open side platform, and I had a buddy who's a welder. He welded this for me out of aluminum so that it's, stainless steel, so that I'm not going to have problems with rust later on. And it's very solid, square tubing. It's very, very solid. And I actually asked him to weld me some channels on top, as you can see. These channels, what they do is they essentially allow the boxes to slide on both sides. They allow the boxes to slide easily in and out, so that I can get them in. They grab the lip of the box on both sides. And these boxes I bought, they're food grade food trays that you can buy. Again, you don't have to go as extravagant as I did, but I bought them, and they came with lids. They came with these lids here, and so I'm going to show you one here. This is an empty one. They came with a lid that's kind of a poly lid, and a lot of people raise mealworms open air, and the reason they do that is the beetles, even though they have wings, they don't fly. And I'll show you some of the beetles here, just so you can see what they look like. These are the darkling beetles, okay? And they don't bite, they don't fly, and they just simply sit there and mate and make eggs. And I have them on a substrate of wheat bran. That's what this is, wheat bran. But some people don't put a lid on it at all, right? They'll just leave it like that. And that's perfectly fine. There's no problem. The reason that I designed mine with lids, and I made these myself, is that I didn't want mice and rats to get in, or June bugs that are flying around to land in there and get in there and foul it up. So I went ahead with a lid system. But with a lid system, I wanted it to be able to breathe, because part of raising mealworms is that they need a certain amount of humidity in the air. So what I did is I cut out, and I'm not going to go into all the details, but I essentially cut out the lid. I'll show you from the inside. I cut the lid with a router, okay? You can see my routing lines here, so I cut it out. And then I bought some mesh, like you might have for a screen door, and I cut it out to size, to fit around the perimeter. And then I just added some double-sided tape underneath to tape it to the plastic. And then I added gaffer's tape on top, and the gaffer's tape is the black tape that you see to seal it. So again, a lot of effort put in, but that way it breathes. And so the humidity in the garage, which is controlled by the AC there, and I also have a dehumidifier here that takes water out of the air if it's too humid, because there's a right humidity that you need, and there's literature online that'll tell you about all that. But essentially, I want to keep it about 73, 74 degrees in here, with about a relative humidity of 60 to 70%. And actually, I'm sorry, 55% is ideal. Above 55%, you can get grain mites to develop in your bran and all of that. And so, so I just have a tiered system where I can move my beetles here. And I can, when they've laid enough eggs, after a certain amount of time, usually about 2 or 3 weeks, I move them to another box. And the ones that stay behind, they just kind of go up in age. These are the younger ones. This is older. As they get older, you'll see in here, they start turning into those mealworms that I was showing you. And you can see here, these are smaller ones, smaller mealworms, and they eat the wheat bran, and they poop out the other side something called frass. And frass is great for gardens. It's a supplement for your garden for anything, but it's like a fine sand, okay? It's like a fine sand, and that's the castings of the mealworm, okay? So I keep it in a bucket, in a tin here, so that I can use it for my garden. And then I have an extra supply of wheat bran that I have heat treated, because I cook it all before I put it in this container, so that I get rid of any grain mite, eggs, or anything that came from wherever I bought it from. So that I keep it in here in a sealed container, so that it's ready to go whenever I need to use it to add to the bins when I need to sift out the frass. And there's a whole system for sifting out the frass and all of that, but I'm not going to go into all that. But what I do is I just basically make sure that it's got a nice layer of bran, wheat bran, and I also add every couple of days, I'll add carrots. And the carrots are a good source of water for the mealworms. They know how to find them just by the humidity level of the carrot, and they'll grab onto it and suck the moisture out of it when they need it. So I add a few carrots, 4 or 5 carrots, little baby carrots, to the tins every 3 or 4 days, and that keeps them hydrated. So, basically what I do is I just let them grow out. I'll move the beetles from one layer to the next, and then I sift out all the wheat bran that's left, and the wheat bran will have the little baby eggs, and those eggs start to grow little mealworms and bigger mealworms and bigger mealworms until the mealworms pupate. And I wanted to see if I could show you what a pupa looks like, and that'll be the end of this video, because I know it's getting long, and I promised you short videos. But once the larvae get big enough, they will turn into a pupa, and I bet you I can find one in here if I look long enough. There's one right there. That is a pupa. You see it? The little white one? See the difference between a mealworm and a pupa? So when it turns from when it goes from a pupa, then it turns into that black beetle that I showed you over there, okay? So there's a whole mechanism for sifting out the pupa. There's another one right there. You can sift these pupa out. They're basically like a chrysalis, like for a butterfly. They're going to go through metamorphosis into a beetle. And so, the cycle just continues. Beetle lays eggs, the eggs become larvae get large, become pupa, turn into beetles. And so if you have your system set up where you have enough of these bins, whether it's as elaborate a system as mine or not, you can keep a constant supply of beetles making eggs turning into larvae, harvesting some of the larvae, letting the rest of the larvae turn into pupa to turn into more beetles to make more eggs, etc. So with this system, I'm hopeful that I'll be able to self-sustain a constant supply of the larval stage of the darkling beetle that I can feed my chickens and not have to buy it from the store. And that's the whole purpose of my mealworm farm. And again, pretty elaborate. There's a lot of things that I do to sift out, how to sift out the pupa from the larva and the frass from the wheat bran, and there's a bunch of stuff that you can do. Those are all more involved videos. I can do one if y'all want. Just let me know. Post a comment, and I'll do one on that. Just tell me what you want to see, and I'll give you information on how I do it. There's lots of different ways to do it, but I'm trying to do it in a way that I think would be commercially viable later if I end up getting into that. So that's my mealworm farm.